Your mindset begets success, and the success begets confidence and a better mindset, so on and so forth. Change what's going on in your head, change your behavior, success will follow, you'll feel more confident, and the virtuous cycle continues. What happens when you change your mindset? Your behavior changes, and once you launch that behavior into the world, you also get positive feedback. So the beginning of change really is the mindset, because that's the one piece we can train ourselves to reframe and change.
Hi, I'm Charlene Oy, dietitian turned business and marketing coach, and you're listening to the Nutrition Business Show. I've been a dietitian for over a decade, generated millions online, and we've helped thousands of health professionals. So if you're looking for a smarter way to grow your nutrition practice and create online programs to scale your business more sustainably, then you're in the right place. So let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the Nutrition Business Show. In today's episode, we are diving into what I believe is the secret weapon to business success, and that is mindset. As business owners, we're often so focused on the strategy side of things that we overlook the role of mindset in impacting in how we show up and helping us to achieve our goals. In fact, I've seen firsthand how we can become our biggest barrier to success if we're not operating with the right mindset. To help us unpack this, I'm joined by Zhai, an investment professional turned psychotherapist. Not only is she super intelligent, I'm also very blessed to call her a dear friend. She works with high-stress, high-performing individuals to help them manage their well-being and show up to build better relationships, whether it's professionally or in their personal life. And together, we're going to explore how mindset is the biggest missing piece in business success, how you can reframe that black and white thinking, and practical ways to overcome mental blocks so you can thrive as a business owner. There are so many golden nuggets and things that we've dived into in this episode. Cannot wait for you to dive in. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Zhai. Hey Zhai, welcome to the Nutrition Business Show podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Hi, Charlene. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I've been an avid listener ever since discovering it.
Fantastic. Now, I am really excited to have you on the show because I have been talking about mindset a little bit on the podcast, but hearing it from an expert like yourself would give amazing insight for our listeners. So what we're going to do is perhaps we'll kick off with a bit of introduction of who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive into all the juicy questions I've got.
Yeah, the short version of who I am is I am a psychotherapist and coach, and I work with people to help them master their mindset and build deeper, better relationships in all aspects of life. So that might mean romantic relationships, marriages. It might also mean with your loved ones, friends, and even coworkers and bosses, kind of these work relationships. I guess I have a story kind of similar to yours. I grew up in China. You didn't grow up in Australia, I think, even though you started work there. I moved to the US on my own at 18 to attend university in California before switching gears and becoming a psychotherapist. Why finance at the beginning? It was a safe option, it was prestigious, and it paid well. I learned a lot all the years that I was doing it, but every time I kind of looked ahead, I was not feeling fulfilled by it, and I also couldn't imagine working all-nighters or giving presentations at 3 a.m., which I've done multiple times, or missing my future children's birthdays later in life. That's kind of when I looked at the senior people in the field that I was working in, that's what they were doing. They were traveling every week, spent a lot of time away from their families, and worked constantly. So like many people that are listening maybe to this podcast, I think life throws us curveballs to push us toward action. My first year of uni, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And by the third year that I was working in New York in my first job in finance, his cancer had metastasized, and so he was terminally ill. I really wanted to get back to Asia to be closer to him, and I was able to get a job working at a global investment bank, Credit Suisse, which no longer exists if you follow financial news. That brought me to Singapore, and I was able to see my dad every weekend, I took the red eye on Friday night from the office, landed at his hospice care facility on Saturday morning, and then Sunday nights, I would say goodbye to dad, get on the plane, land at the Singapore airport, go to the office, shower there, and start the week all over again. So it was 6 months that was really exhausting, but also it gave me so much peace to be able to spend that time with him. So in terms of life path, right, to bring it back to the question, I think my father died quite happy as a Chinese dad with a perfect picture of what his little girl's life would look like. I was working in a bank. I was engaged to a hedge fund manager. It was kind of the ideal setup for a Chinese dad's vision of a good life. But I was deeply unhappy. I had worked so hard through school, through uni, and professionally to kind of get to the top. But once I got there, I really questioned what was it all for? Like, if I'm like my dad and I've only got 50 years to live, by the time he died, I had lived more than half my life. Is that what I want to do? Working in a bank and not spending time doing things that felt fulfilling. So the journey to psychotherapy really started with wanting to help myself find meaning and balance. I did for a while just casual self-study of philosophy, religion, and psychology. And eventually I realized that psychology was a structured and practical way to not only help myself, but also help others. It still took me 12 years of part-time going through graduate school while working, while being a mom to complete my qualifications. But I got there in the end, and I haven't looked back since. It's been such a rewarding second career, second life.
Yeah, wow. What a journey, Chi. And I think that oftentimes as health professionals, we get into the field out of what happens to us in life, whether we've got a diagnosis or backstory of helping someone through something. And I think for you, I'm really sorry to hear about your dad, but I guess, again, it's probably given you a deeper meaning and that push that you need to venture out and do something where it brings you deep fulfillment and joy as well. So I'm glad, yeah, that you found this path and are helping people now. So this brings us to the next question, Chi, in terms of your work as a psychotherapist. I'm sure, bring it back to our listeners, you would work with business owners and people who are successful in their careers, in their life. So one question that I often get from my clients is, what personality traits or characteristics do you see in people who are more successful that helps them to achieve more success, basically in what they do versus those who don't?
Great question. I view all people as somewhere on a spectrum from more anxious to more depressive. And the more depressive people tend to be a bit lethargic. Oh, I know I should get up and do this thing, but I just can't work up the energy. Modern society, the way we work and capitalism really reward people who have this anxiety trait. I don't mean that if you're a successful business owner or if you're one of my clients that you have clinical anxiety. It's more that we are rewarded for this restlessness and this energy of like, I got to get up, I got to do things. So up until a certain point in our careers, this do trait really helps us. But then at a certain point, it stops working, right? We get more senior in our jobs, we have more responsibilities. If we've built a business, we've got the business itself, we've got the admin tasks, the marketing, and then many of us have families. So constantly doing and feeding into the anxiety, calming the anxiety by doing no longer works. And that's where, people need to inflect and realize that success means learning to manage your anxious tendency with a toolbox that's bigger than let me just do it, check it off the to-do list. So I really advocate for clients to balance action with reflection and to harness both their cognition as well as their emotional and intuitive intelligence. People who share this anxious trait tend to forget that it's important to rest and that it's important to create white space, which is not constantly doing or working on the business, but really stepping back and asking, am I doing the right things? Am I working smarter rather than just harder?
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing that perspective as well, because I think a lot of us in business, we're driven, we're ambitious, and we want to achieve more. And that's why we started a business, right? Because we are not satisfied or fulfilled with where we are in our career working for someone else. So we want to go off and work, build something of our own. And yeah, often I see that challenge that business owners may face in it's kind of like it's hard to switch off in a sense. So do you often see that in business owners that you work with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of my clients are either business owners like your listeners, or they're kind of C-level executives. And not only do they have a hard time switching off, there's a point at which you get so important that you can't simply do. And that's the executor versus manager or business owner mentality. And I think that's a challenge people face. You are obviously very competent. You got to where you are by doing everything yourself. But once you start to scale, you've got enough business, enough responsibilities, you're actually holding the business and the job back if you try to do everything perfectly yourself. That's when you really need to start delegate, start trusting other people, let people make mistakes, and shift gears from being like a peon in doing mode to strategy kind of CEO, business owner mode.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. And I often say you get to where you are, but you can't move further and get ahead if you keep doing the same things that you've been doing. And new level kind of requires new strategies. So I love
Totally.
that you've
Yeah.
shared that. The next thing that I wanted to chat about, she is mindset, because that is such a big buzzword in entrepreneurship. And I feel that there are a lot of mindset coaches out there teaching mindset in different aspects of life. But when it relates to business itself, why do you think that is such an important thing
Yeah.
to consider or practice?
Such a good question. Human beings, we are unique among the animal kingdom because we have the power of cognition. That means our thoughts. So other animals mostly operate on emotion and intuition, right? They hear a noise in the forest, they immediately either flee or they attack. That's not going through a thought process. But for us, in any situation we encounter, we're motivated by cognition, which is our thoughts, emotion, which is our feelings, and behavior, which is our actions. These things happen not simultaneously. So people often get stuck in a rut of not knowing what to do, or they burn themselves out by doing too much without time to reflect on priorities and working smarter in a way that's more aligned with their real dreams and goals. And then we feel helpless. So, speaking of mindset, of these three elements that govern every human interaction, cognition, emotion, and behavior, we can actually control our thoughts. That's the mindset. And we can control our behaviors. We can't really control emotion or intuition. They happen like the weather. We simply learn how to ride the waves of feeling and develop helpful coping mechanisms rather than addictions. And overworking is a kind of addiction, right? So is comfort eating, online shopping, gambling. So once we can change our thoughts, once we can change our mindset, our behaviors then align with what we really want to accomplish rather than our mindset, our thoughts sabotaging ourselves. So what does that look like? I'm going to give a practical example because textbook psychology, I think sometimes is hard to relate to. So take this podcast, for example. My initial thought might have been, oh, I'm going to totally bomb this podcast recording. Charlotte's so experienced. She's got a big business. What do I know about nutrition? What do I know about building an online business? I don't have anything to offer. She's going to think it's a waste of time that we recorded the episode, or we'll release it and nobody's going to listen to it. Right now, if that's our mindset and those are our thoughts, I'm going to behave in a way that makes it self-fulfilling, right? I might procrastinate on preparing for the episode. I might show up late. I might not test my equipment because I'm kind of protecting myself from the disappointment of failure, of saying I tried and I still didn't do well. But if I master my mindset, I reframe my thoughts to something more productive and also true. Like I could say to myself, it's true, I don't know much about dietitians and nutritionists, but I've worked with hundreds of people struggling with behavior change, mindset, and motivation. Nutritionists are just like other people. So if I can share just one key takeaway on this podcast, and if that resonates with people, I have succeeded. All right, so I've shifted a negative mindset to a positive mindset. With this positive mindset, now I'm motivated. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write notes, I'm going to make sure I look presentable, I'm going to test my mic before you dial on, and then the podcast recording goes off well. What happens when you change your mindset? Your behavior changes. And once you launch that behavior into the world, you also get positive feedback. So because I've prepared and you release an episode, and maybe some listeners will come in with questions, or maybe some people will message me and say, thank you so much. I found that so helpful. Now I have a self-reinforcing positive cycle. Now I believe and I'm more confident. So it becomes easier and easier to have this positive mindset. every time I go into a similar situation. So the beginning of change really is the mindset, because that's the one piece we can train ourselves to reframe and change.
Yeah, that is a really good insight into viewing mindset. And I often see with clients coming to me, we talk about how important strategy is. So, as a business and marketing strategist, we talk about strategy all day, but I still see that mindset is such a big piece of it all, because without the right mindset in it, you're going to struggle to execute, right? And I often see very successful professionals that come to me, they've got tons of experience, some even 20, 30 years of experience. But if their mind is not in the right place, it can almost become a barrier to them moving forward to executing. Because oftentimes, one example I'll give is perfectionism, or the fact that I need to have all my I's dotted or my T's crossed before I put something out there, or even self-doubt. I'm not good enough, even though they've got tons of experience. So I suppose if someone is experiencing those thoughts of self-doubt, judgment, what would my peers think about me, fear of failure, what advice would you have for them?
I think the first step actually is self-awareness, right? In that example of the podcast recording and the two different mindsets that lead to different outcomes, because I'm a therapist, I spend a lot of time thinking about human psychology, exploring my own psyche. So I can actually identify that I'm saying unhelpful things that are going to sabotage my behavior and turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. What I find is majority of clients in the beginning, they don't realize that. Because if you go up to any reasonable person, they'd be like, of course not. I wouldn't say these things that are sabotaging me. But we have the subconscious mind. So first thing that I encourage people to do is create a bit of white space. That means you're not constantly doing. Actually give yourself CEO, business owner downtime to think. And in the process of thinking and noticing what thoughts arise, what feelings, insecurities, fears come up, that's where you identify the mindset. You can't work on it if you don't know what you have. So what you described, this fear of failure and perfectionism, in psychology terms, we call it black and white thinking, right? This is an unhelpful mindset. It's a faulty cognition. What you're saying is, if I don't do it perfectly, then it's a complete failure. But life is not 0 to 100. Life is not black or white. Life happens in all the shades of gray and the colors in between. So when you're able to identify that you have a common unhelpful mindset, then there are lists of common ones, then you can begin to tackle it. You can ask yourself questions like, is that entirely true? What's a different way that I can frame it such that I still acknowledge that I have fears and anxieties about failing, but I don't set myself up for failure by saying it's got to be A or it has to be B. It can't be any version in between.
Yeah, I love how you put it. Like, life happens in all shades of gray. It's not black or white. And it brings me, as you know, if you're in the intuitive eating space and non-dieting space, you'll see that weight loss, oftentimes people have that black and white thinking where it's all or nothing. So it's very similar in the way that you're explaining this as well. And I think oftentimes, even for myself included, I don't think any of us are spared from these self-doubt. I don't think ever goes away in a sense, but it's really how you approach it and how you coach and talk yourself through these negative self-belief and making sure that we're not stuck in that space. So I suppose if we're talking about the consequences, if we continue to go in that downward spiral, what would happen if someone stayed stuck in that space?
Frustration, burnout, depression certainly is one of them. Then we start also taking out our emotions. If we don't know how to address and regulate our emotions, just like if we don't know how to regulate our mindset, we start having unintended consequences. Like we may deteriorate our relationships with our family members because the next time your husband asks you, how's your business going? You snap at him because that inner voice of fear of failure or that script you're playing in your head of, I'm not doing well enough. Look at X, look at Y, look at Z. They're all doing better. I'm never going to make it as a business owner. Then that thought is not only affecting you, it's affecting the people around you. It's deteriorating your physical health, your mental, emotional health, and your relationships. So really, I would love for listeners to take away this. Your mindset begets success, and the success begets confidence and a better mindset, so on and so forth. So start by identifying what's going on in your head, then change what's going on in your head, change your behavior. Success will follow. You'll feel more confident, and the virtuous cycle continues.
Yeah, I love that. Along similar lines, Chi, I know selling and marketing ourselves can be a challenging thing to do because as health professionals, what a lot of us are used to is people coming to us and seeing us, whether they're referred by doctors or you're seeing someone by the bedside because you've got a referral to see them on the ward. So clients are coming to see you. But when it comes to running a business, oftentimes we have to promote ourselves. We have to talk about ourselves with what we do and how we can help someone. And that can be a huge challenge for a lot of people as well. So I suppose where it relates to the mindset piece, what advice would you have for someone who is struggling to come to terms with selling themselves?
Yeah. So I can totally relate to this. I think health professionals, we traditionally work in kind of a medicalized setting. We view what we provide as a necessity. We get referrals from doctors. We might think it's unprofessional or maybe even a bit sleazy to promote ourselves. This is a mindset challenge like we just talked about. So let's practice. What is the negative thought that we're having here when we say, oh, I don't want to sell myself? That's unprofessional. Or like, are people going to think I'm unprofessional, greedy, or pompous? So what's a more positive thought that we can reframe this into? Is it true and kind to yourself to say something like, well, my nutrition clients generally walk away thanking me for how much I've helped them. And many people out there are suffering. They don't know that their condition can be helped. I'm not selling to them. I'm actually offering people who don't know how to help themselves a chance to feel better. When you frame it that way, it's not pompous. It is still factually true. And it is a lot kinder to you and more conducive to your productivity than the other mindset, which is maybe somebody will think you're unprofessional. Maybe some old school practitioners who are not comfortable with putting themselves out there also think, oh, are you arrogant? What do you have to show for it? But why don't we choose the more positive mindset? Because that then launches better behavior and gets better outcomes.
Thank you, Chi. I think that along the same lines as well, it's so key that we switch the way and how we perceive selling, right? Because if we think that we're sleazy, we're going to feel so uncomfortable and hold ourselves back. But if we switch that self-talk to, I know a lot more than clients. I've gone to uni to study years of degree, so much knowledge, and I can help someone with that. So with that knowledge and skill, and even what we've been blessed with to help someone, I believe so strongly that it can then change someone's life. So if we switch that mindset around, I think selling is going to become a natural part of what we do. It's a service that we offer in exchange for a fee that they would pay us for that, right? So it makes a huge difference to just by changing the way that we view it.
For sure. And I want to maybe revisit your previous question, which is how do people overcome this mindset? I've talked about the first step being developing self-awareness. And that self-awareness really comes from creating pockets of space where you step back from your autopilot mode, which is get through the day, get all my tasks done, and reflect on what's going on in your mind through critical moments. It's moments when there's a bit of a conflict or a bit of like an emotional burst. Those are the hints. Those are the clues that something deeper is happening. And so the framework that we use in psychotherapy is based on cognitive behavioral therapy. We start with a trigger event. So for example, why did I suddenly burst out crying or have a meltdown when I had to go approach this client and sell my services? Then when you have the trigger event, you can start to break down, what was I thinking at that time? What did I then feel? And then what did I do with it? And the last piece is, what was the consequence? Once you can break down a situation like that, you can really zone in on the situations that give you this anxiety and insecurity and the thoughts that you have that perpetuate. And from there, you can start to change it. So really identifying it first is the first step.
Yeah, huge. That ability to become self-aware and identifying where it's tripping you up, that's really key. Thank you for sharing that. Now, the next question I want to ask you is a big one because I see it stopping a lot of people from moving forward, that fear of failure, which we touched on earlier as well, where people Oftentimes I see very experienced practitioners who are nervous about launching their online program, for example, and putting their course out there because they're afraid of failure. So before we even get there, we're already conjuring these stories in our mind about how, what if no one buys? What if it's not successful? And all the stories we tell ourselves. So talk to us a little bit about how this can really stop someone from achieving success and what measures or strategies they can put in place to see themselves through it.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'm going to tell you a story, right? This sounds so familiar. I work a lot with relationships, ranging from people who are frustrated and single, they're not finding their soulmate, to married couples who have kids and busy jobs, and they've gone into a roommate relationship where they're together. Emotionally, they feel very alone. And I think some of this relationship stuff is actually quite similar to the entrepreneurship journey, right? That feeling of loneliness. If anyone listening has dated in the last 10 years, you've probably used an app, and it can get really demoralizing to be swiping, and still not find the one. So that mindset is a killer. It's the, what's wrong with me? Men don't want to date me. I'll never find someone. I'm going to fail at dating. I'm going to fail at this marriage thing. The more kind and true mentality, the more kind and true mindset is really, I don't need 100 people to swipe right. I just need one qualified right person to swipe right and make it through the whole dating process to becoming my life partner. So if we adopt this mindset, every failed date or relationship is actually an iteration, right? To use a startup term, it's an iteration toward your end goal. Everything that didn't work out was in fact an important data point. It was a learning opportunity which helped you revise and refine your process, your product, test out your offerings, and that all brings you closer to entrepreneurial success. It's really a bit of a playing a mind trick on yourself, right? Saying, instead of the word failure, can I use the word learning opportunity? Instead of failure, can I use the word iteration? Because that's what business is, right? You're constantly building until you find the thing. I don't know that many, let's talk in the billionaire game. I don't know any billionaires who are self-made who started out and their first business idea made them billions. When you look into these people's backstories, they've had so many failed businesses. But are those failed businesses? Each one was a stepping stone that taught them something that ultimately led to the product and the company that launched their success.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Even for me, I think I've had 3 or 4 business ideas. Some of them didn't really get to fruition before I found the sweet spot of where I really want to be. And so I love the example you shared, because I think oftentimes the way that we view it, it can really create the outcome that we don't want ultimately. And so changing our perspective is a huge part of this. And failure there's never a failure in the business world, right? That's what I tell all my clients. It's a setup, it's a learning opportunity, opening the next door for you, which leads to more and more success as you go, because you learn from each kind of misstep that we might take. And so, yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you, Chi, for that.
If you never put anything out there, you never get data points back. You never get to test it. And I think with solo entrepreneurs especially, we feel a lot of the financial burden, right? So failure means money lost. But what if we reframe that as, that wasn't money lost, that was tuition fee that I paid for this learning opportunity.
Yeah. And you learn so much from it. You become more resilient, I would say, each time you have a little failure or a misstep that you take, and just informs your next step. So yeah, love that. Chi, you're a mum. I'm a mum too. And I have a lot of business owners that comes to me who are mums or they want to become a mum. But there is that fear or that concern that goes, how am I going to juggle it all? I have to be a mum, a business owner, have to be a wife, a sister, and all of that. So being in a female-dominated profession, I see that the stress of needing to carry it all being a huge burden for women. So talk to us a little bit about what you see in your work and how you support female business owners through it.
Gosh, so much to say on this. Before we started recording, we were talking about what our kids are doing so we can carve out this time to do this podcast. I've got 4 kids. It's a blended family. Everything's big and messy. I really relate to female working moms, right? The biggest hurdle I see my working mom clients facing is this, a pleaser mentality. This is so common in women, right? Partly it's from our biological wiring as nurturers. We grow life, we nurture it to fruition. And partly it's also how we are socialized. We raise girls to be pleasant, nice, and helpful. This mentality really leads to women deprioritizing ourselves, catering to everyone else at home, at work, and we run ourselves into the ground with exhaustion. So the antidote to this pleaser mentality is a value myself mentality. You don't have to be everybody's cup of tea. Not every request or message requires an immediate response. Not every question even deserves an answer or explanation, right? Women often are over-explaining ourselves. Set your boundaries and stick to them. So in practice, a common mistake, a misconception that I see people making is we think it's up to other people to respect our boundaries. Actually, boundaries are up to us to set and enforce. People are, in that sense, just animals. They're responding to stimulus. If you condition them, like your clients or your boss, to expect a 1 hour response rate or to offer a discount or to give every accommodation that they ask for, you're setting their expectations unreasonably high and setting yourself up for disappointment and failure. Value myself also means self-care. You, as a working mom, as a business owner, deserve to have downtime. In fact, that downtime is critical to your success as an entrepreneur. So the question I want to ask listeners now is, what are you doing this year to replenish your energy in a small way on a daily and weekly basis? And what's something bigger that you're doing on a regular basis, right? I'll share some examples. Personally, my daily exercise, even if it's just a 20-minute walk, that's a sacred part of my work because it helps me focus, it keeps my body healthy, and it keeps my mind sharp so that I can serve my clients. A weekly small recharge involves some kind of personal grooming, right? If it's nails, hair, a massage, or just taking time to choose an outfit that makes me feel good. This is professionally necessary in a people-facing business. It's also necessary to fueling my tank so that I can keep giving to my clients. And my bigger routine, quarterly is what I'm experimenting with this year, is I'm going to do a retreat to relax, or I'm going to set aside time to learn, right? So that means in March, I'm doing a detox holiday with my best friend from New York. That's just a do nothing, rest and recharge physically. And in June, I'm going to join your Bali retreat, right? Because that's something that I've invested in myself to learn. It's not taking something away from me, like knowledge I'm imparting to clients, but it's giving me, right? I'm going to learn knowledge from you, Charlene, and from all the other attendees. We cannot give from a place of exhaustion and scarcity. We also cannot teach our clients anything if we're not learning ourselves. So now it's still early in the year. This is the time, I think, to start building you time into your calendar. Block off time in your calendar where people can't book it. Set aside the budget, maybe even put this self-care budget into your business costs and training and development budget to send yourself on something educational or restorative. I think these two things are super important to working moms' long-term sustainable success.
Yeah, I love that advice. So, we're viewing self-care as something that we prioritize so that we can show up and give, because we cannot give from an empty cup or an empty tank. So I think sometimes we almost feel guilty, and I'm speaking for myself as well. We view setting time aside for ourselves, going for relaxing stuff. We feel guilty about that because it's time that we're not spending with our kids or with our clients. We could be booking more clients in that spot. And I love what you've said there. It's just viewing in a way where we are filling our cup so that we can show up to be a better practitioner for our clients. Yeah, a better version of ourselves. So we're not snappy at our kids if they're getting on our nerves.
Or if you're like waiting for a session with a client to be over, like that's not a good place to be teaching from. And people can also sense that. So to piggyback on your word of guilt, the killer word that I really want all like working moms to banish is selfish. We often view doing something like self-care that's necessary, learning that's necessary, we view that as selfish. Why is it selfish? Think about quality over quantity. A lot of working professionals with young children feel like if they take time away from sitting there, watching their baby, patting them to sleep, changing the diaper, like doing all of that as necessary. But my question is, if you're spending 5 hours a day doing manual labor with your child that you don't enjoy, Versus what if you carved out 30 minutes after you've done your self-care, your work, you've done the things that really are meaningful to you as a grown-up, as a professional, then in that 30 minutes, you are actually really bonding with your child. The child also feels this, right? We know the difference between quality time and quantity time. So quality over quality, necessary versus selfish and guilty. Start switching up your words, change your mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And another example comes to my mind as well, which is something I often discuss with my clients, Chi, is around boundaries for clients, right? So I've got clients that tell me, I'm busy all day. I've got no time for self-care. I'm constantly playing catch up. And then when we dive deeper into where they're spending their time each day, and a lot of it is spent in that reactive mode. Oh, I got a message from my client, so I have to respond to them because my clients expects a response. And this is where we talk about the fact that boundaries are so necessary to protect your energy, to protect your time, your mindset as a business owner. So if you could give us like a tangible example, tangible advice here of how we can share with our clients, hey, like I can't message you back right away, but in a nice professional way.
Yeah. I think the mindset, the word switches that you're making for yourself are the perfect way to share with clients, right? Like when you describe that example of a client has just messaged me after hours, I really need to reply. For me, my mindset is after hours, I might be making a typo, sending them the wrong information, which then ultimately causes more inconvenience for them. I have to resend the information or I confuse them. So I'd rather do it during work hours. Now, how do I share that with clients? For example, a lot of therapists have as their email footer, right? The signature just says, because I spend most of my time in session with clients, I cannot guarantee that I will respond to your message immediately, or because I want to offer you the most focused and intentional responses, please pardon the delay. So that's something. The other thing you said is like when entrepreneurs say, I don't have time to relax. If you really, I've done time studies, right? If you actually study your time, a lot of the time that you think is downtime is actually working your nervous system up rather than regulating your nervous system down. And you talked about reaction. A lot of the time, if we're like watching Netflix, that's not really relaxing. Or if you're scrolling, what you're doing is having random stimuli that somebody else chose come at you. And then you're reacting to it kind of by just numbing your brain. I don't actually think that's a good use of your time. And I'd be surprised if you look at your screen time. I'd be surprised if anybody listening to this cannot find 10 to 15 minutes of time that they spend, maybe, pardon the expression, even like sitting on the toilet for too long, just doom scrolling. Now, imagine if you took that dead time and actually made it something restorative or educational. That recharges you. All the other stuff is just stimulus in, reaction out. It doesn't actually help you.
Yeah, so 10 to 15 minutes, it's all it takes, right? And even if it's practicing like deep breathing, finding that white space, and doing something for yourself to read a chapter or a few pages of a book to fill your cup, I don't think anyone can find that time.
5 minutes is somebody's smoke break, somebody sitting for too long, somebody scrolling Instagram when they actually wanted to check email. So if you can do 5 minutes of a quiet practice in the morning, 5 minutes before bed, these are going to make a huge difference. It's in those quiet 10 minutes that you're going to start noticing what subconscious self-sabotaging thoughts and feelings are coming to the surface. So ultimately, that helps you toward greater success.
Chi, because you work with a lot of couples and you specialize in relationships, so a lot of females in the nutrition business space, they might be wives or have a partner in some sense. And so one of the things that they bring to me is sometimes the fact that their partner may not be on board with what they do, or they might view their business as a little fun side hobby and they don't see it seriously. I'm not putting anyone down by saying this, but this is some of the things that my clients mentioned to me. And so how can we have those conversations so that they'll start to take our business more seriously or come on board and be more supportive of it?
So much to say on this. Absolutely, you're right. A partner plays such a big part in your success or lack thereof, right? The old school saying is right wife, right life. So that's a just sexist, outdated way of recognizing that the number one most important relationship in your life is the romantic one. It affects how you build your family, how you build your career. So a lot of the tools that I've shared so far on developing self-awareness and a positive mindset, actually, if you put these into practice, you are already improving your relationship and getting your partner on board. Even if your partner is doing nothing to learn and improve themselves in this respect. Kindness begets kindness. Calm begets calm. Positivity begets positivity. Often we have two working professionals trying to juggle a mortgage, demanding jobs, childcare. Both people are coming into it from a place of scarcity and a lack of self-awareness. If you do the work to understand your own mindset, your own triggers, your habitual unhelpful responses, then you learn how to regulate your own emotions and your mindset, you will change your relationship dynamic. Now, as a partnership, as a pair, you take it further and both partners get on board with working on themselves and working on the relationship. You're going to launch from this frustrated roommate relationship where you're running your business on your own, but your partner is just like poop-eyeing it. You're going to go from that relationship rut into a positive growth cycle together. So I guess one tip is really work on yourself. And the second one is don't be afraid to ask for help. Some people are really stuck in the mindset, oh, my relationship has to be really messed up if we go for couples counseling. But yet we don't say that about our physical fitness or about your every 6 month dental visit, right? You don't say my teeth have to be really rotting for me to visit the dentist. We view those actions as healthy maintenance for our bodies. We are no longer living in a Darwinian world like creatures living in a world of physical survival. Our emotions and our mindset are what dictate the bulk of our success or failure in modern life. So why not invest in maintaining a healthy mindset and in maintaining healthy emotional self-regulation? So work on yourself. Don't be afraid to seek outside help. You don't have to be the expert in everything. You can be the expert on your business and leave the other stuff for professionals to help you with.
Yeah, it's totally okay to invest in ourselves, isn't it? Because again, it speaks to how it will help if we look after ourselves, if we prioritize filling our cup, that's when we can show up to be a better business owner, a better practitioner for our clients, and also a better wife, better mom, all of that as well. So thank you for that advice. Now, Chi, this has been such an insightful conversation, and I really hope that our listeners will listen to it as many times as you want to really soak up all the valuable advice and strategies that you've given. And before we end this episode, I always like to ask my guest this question. So if you were to go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would you say to yourself, whether it's professionally or just growth as a person?
Definitely to my younger 20-something female self, I would say, develop the value yourself mentality. You don't have to be a pleaser. You have so much to offer the world. You're going to grow at an incredible pace. Pick a partner that doesn't just check the basic boxes now, but rather someone who can grow with you. Know what you need out of your work, not just a job, but the great work of your life that gives you meaning. And don't be afraid to take risks that go against what society values, stability, prestige, all that. Build something that you personally value because you are important. Value yourself.
That's such a beautiful piece of advice. Yeah, life is short. Make sure you do something that fills your cup and makes you happy.
For sure.
Wonderful, Chi. Thank you so much. Now, if our listeners want to connect with you further and learn from you more, where they can find you?
The easiest place is to connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram account is seeing_chi, spelled QI. I also share daily content there on building positive relationships and a positive mindset. For those who use LinkedIn and YouTube, I'm also active there. Look, thank you so much for having me on your show, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what questions listeners have about our discussion today.
Thank you, Chi. You've been amazing, and I really can't wait to have you at our retreat in Bali. And for those of you who are still thinking about it, like I said before, strategy is a big part of business, but I believe that mindset is so key as well. And that's why we are so honored and blessed to have Chi join us in the upcoming Bali retreat in June. And I'm going to share more about her soon. And if you guys are interested in joining us at the Bali retreat, I will put the link in the show notes so you can go ahead and check it out. Thank you once again for tuning in this week. I'll see you guys back here next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.